back for a special free agency edition of the show. Fan favorites getting cut, potential new fan favorites being added, and a recent fan favorite coming back to the team as well. It's been a wild start to free agency. Brendan and Jacob breaking it down next on a special free agency edition of the Pick Six. And we are live. Welcome to the Pick Six. I am Brendan Dworzinski. He is Jacob Westendorf, and we are here with you. Got a bit of a late start, but we're here with you for the next hour, breaking down what has already been a truly wild and truly unexpected start to free agency. We're going to get to all of it. We're going to get to the newcomers to the Packers. We're going to get to the fan favorites, Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari. Don't worry, we will get to them. The Keyshawn Nixon news as well here on Tuesday afternoon, assuming you are watching us live on YouTube. I have about 48 minutes or so carved out, Jacob, to talk Corey Ballantyne as well. So I'm very much looking forward to making sure we get the Washburn Ichabod on here.
Yeah, I was going to go with the top 30 draft visit for Zach Zinter, which is reportedly happening at some point too. So yeah, I think the biggest news of the day, like you said, the Corey Ballantyne is back. Tyler Davis is back.
That's right.
And maybe replacing one Michigan guard in Runyon with another in Zach Zinter. I'm sure nothing else has happened in the last 2 days. I will say this to start, and rest in peace, Ted Thompson. But man, I remember when this time of year was just like the most boring part of the day or boring part of the year, because it was just like, baseball doesn't start for another couple weeks. Mm-hmm. If you're into college hoops, then it's kind of your boiling point for that. But man, from a football standpoint, and I'm thinking like for myself, from a content creator standpoint, who are they going to sign in free agency? Nobody. Wake me up when the draft starts. Like,
yeah, let's talk exclusive rights tenders. That's what we're talking about.
Right,
that's yeah. I appreciate Brian Gutekunst for that. I think Gut is a very good GM. Haven't won a Super Bowl yet, so I don't think I can call him a great one. I think he's done a very good job of building this roster, finding talent for it, and gives us something to talk about at this time of year and not just wait for the NFL draft. So certainly very excited about that. I wanted to start real quick, and we'll go through this quickly because we do have a ton of actual news to get to, but we always bring you an extra point. So I wanted to ask you, Jacob, with a point of historical perspective to open this up, your all-time favorite Packers free agent signing.
Come on, man. This is the easiest answer ever. Like,
we're right there.
He's over that way a little bit. But Charles Woodson, like, I mean, okay, so I was 2 when they signed Reggie White. When God and Mark Eckel told Reggie White to go to Green Bay, I was 2. So that doesn't count. But I remember I was 16 when they signed Charles Woodson, or 15, somewhere in that time frame. But I remembered watching Woodson put that rose from the Rose Bowl in his mouth when he was the Heisman Trophy winner, the only defensive player to ever win the Heisman Trophy, mind you, and won a national championship for my favorite college team. And I always say, like, I like try and talk big and say, like, I won't care anymore about a player if he's a Packer, if he played at the school but that's a line of bullshit. Like, of course I'm going to be nepotistic towards those players. I rooted for them at once. Like, Charles Woodson was like a huge signing that Green Bay never made. And then I don't know if you remember this, Brendan, but there was like scuttle. They were going to let him wear the number 2 when he came to Green Bay, but the rules didn't allow it at that point. They ended up not doing that. But there are pictures from him in practice wearing the number 2, which would have been the sickest thing ever. Instead, he got the number 21. He's in the Hall of Fame now. You can make an argument that his jersey should be retired. I would not personally retire it, knowing the rules the NFL has and everything like that, but you can make that argument. And for my money's worth, Charles Woodson is the best defensive back to ever lace them up in this game. So yeah, that is a easy favorite free agent signing ever, Charles Woodson.
Yeah, I mean, I was not alive for Reggie White. I was not around at all when he signed. I mean, historically speaking, obviously extremely important. But yeah, I mean, it's Charles Woodson. I'm with you. You have a very real argument that he's the greatest of all time to do what he does. No argument from me. Had to start off with a softball, get us back in the groove here. But we do have a ton of news to get to. I wanted to start with the positivity because I know there's going to be some realism and certainly at the same time some sadness when we talk about the guys who have been released by the team. I wanted to start with the positive notes, and I know we have a comment in here on YouTube as well asking about Josh Jacobs and is that a positive signing, break even, downgrade? We'll get to Jacobs second. I wanted to start with Xavier McKinney because we went into this offseason, Jacob, and we did our final show of the year. We talked about what needs to be addressed for this team. What does this offseason need to look like, free agency, draft-wise, etc.? Where are the holes? And I mean, shoot, we've talked for how many years now about how big of a hole safety is for this Green Bay defense. I don't know that Xavier McKinney is going to be a first-team All-Pro in Jeff Hafley's defense. And I mean, shoot, we didn't even know Jeff Hafley was a candidate for the DC job when the season came to an end back in the mid part of January. But this team has needed a safety, just quality safety play. I mean, since what? Micah Hyde left town, and frankly, even before that, probably
Nick Collins,
yeah. I mean, it's been forever, frankly, since the Packers had reliable, constant safety play. Then, secondarily, we know that Jeff Hafley's defense, you need a true number one playmaking safety. Everybody who broke down film from Boston College or his time at Ohio State or his time with the 49ers knows you've got to have that star safety for this defense to work the way it is supposed to function on the back end. So for the Packers to address both of those things and then hit the bonus round as well and get maybe, arguably, it's actually a pretty good safety free agent class, to get maybe the best one out there on the market. I mean, that's a huge coup for a team that even when the Packers have spent in recent years, go back, the obvious example of this is 2019, right? When you go out and you get Preston Smith, you get Zadarius Smith, you got Billy Turner. I'm forgetting someone as well who was in
Adrian Amos.
There you go. Adrian Amos. Freaking love Adrian Amos. Yes, he did come that year. I thought it was 2020. Beside the point, you're correct. You bring in all those guys, good players. I mean, Amos gave us some really good years in Green Bay. Preston Smith is still playing really quality football. Billy Turner was useful. Z, a lot of other issues, but 2019, there were a couple of games you could probably argue he won the game single-handedly. I think of Minnesota on Monday Night Football as one example of that. We haven't seen the Packers, though, go get the number one player at any given position on the free agent board. There's certainly an argument Xavier McKinney is that guy. So to hit on that, to hit on a major need, and to generate some real positive momentum for this defense, I mean, more than anything else that has happened, and we'll get to all of it, that is a home run for the Green Bay Packers. You couldn't have asked for a better day one of free agency event for Green Bay.
No, and I went through the list. So Ross Uglum, Packer Report, number one free agent on that board was Xavier McKinney. Bill Huber, Packers Central, best website that writes about Packers football, in my personal and humble opinion. Number one free agent on that board is Xavier McKinney. Matt Schneidman, The Athletic, number one, Xavier McKinney. Like you said, they've spent before, they've gotten guys before, but even talking about Charles Woodson wasn't, if Woodson was a big-time free agent, he was never coming to Green Bay because Woodson, has been very vocal about the fact, even since he's been here, that he didn't want to come to Green Bay. It was basically it was because they were it. That was it. Interesting, at least enough there. Z, Preston, Billy Turner, Adrian Amos, all those guys, good players. While Z was the one, I think Z famously got graded as an F for a free agent signing because they gave him so much money and he wasn't a starter. And then for the first 2 years, he was the best player of that free agent class, which leads to another interesting question that we can talk about another time is, does Preston's longevity make him the best player from that free agent class? Because he's been around now for quite a while. But it's been so rare that Green Bay gets, when Garrett Cole becomes a free agent in baseball, that's down to 4 or 5 teams right off the jump, just because of the nature of that sport. That's just the way that works, right? Green Bay is usually on the outside of those teams when it comes to that kind of stuff. Now, they have been able to do more stuff with Brian Gutekunst, and they have been more aggressive, which is the word that he used in his first ever press conference as a general manager. And to Gutekunst's credit, every year the offseason hits and you got the gloom and doomer fans saying oh, well, he'll never actually spend any money. Typical Packers, blah, blah, blah. Really, ever since Goody, they've spent every year that they could. Now, some of that was good, guys we've talked about. Some of that wasn't. Jimmy Graham, Mo Wilkerson, stuff like that comes to mind, right? To me, this is a perfect blend to add to this team. He's young. He's 24 years old. He's the same age as Anthony Johnson Jr., who will be entering his second season next year. Xavier McKinney is 24 years old. He was a baby when he entered the NFL. So that's a good start. He can play. I think he can play that post safety, which is the new buzzword of the offseason, or he can play strong. And I think he can do some stuff in nickel too. Like, you've watched him make plays all over that formation and the way they do things on defense. But I think the way that you listen to the way Jeff Hafley has described what he valued in a safety, he described Xavier McKinney to a T, which is why I think it was Connor Hughes reported the Packers had done some homework on him during the season. To me, it was just one of those, this is the guy they wanted. And I don't think they were leaving day one without him. And it's a perfect mix-up because usually the Albert Haynesworth contracts, those guys that get signed on the first day of free agency, typically don't work out so good. But this is a perfect combination of a young ascending player who happens to fit Green Bay's biggest need perfectly. Now, again, if you're expecting him to be Nick Collins in his prime, you're probably going to be disappointed. Now, that being said, is it an overpay? Maybe. But
all free agency is.
I was going to say, if you are like smart and measured with every free agent, you will finish third in every free agent race. And I can't remember the general manager says that. Michael Kay quotes it all the time, but I can't remember who said it. But it's true. If you're smart, like if the Packers offered a smart contract to Xavier McKinney, he is playing for the Philadelphia Eagles right now, or whatever other team was in competition for his services. Sometimes it's just what you have to do. And to me, even with I wouldn't say this if one of the players was healthy, but like that was the biggest move, like you said, from day one, because he is the best player that we know is healthy. Now, if David Bakhtiari were healthy, yes, releasing a Hall of Fame left tackle is a bigger piece of news than Xavier McKinney. But you want to talk about, I mean, the Packers, no disrespect to these guys, but they were starting Jonathan Owens and Rudy Ford and Anthony Johnson. And like, we were literally talking ourselves into Darnell Savage doing things he has not done in Green Bay in 3 years because of the other guys that were around him. They just basically had to punt on the position because of the salary cap medicine that they were taking over the last couple of years. So this is it's an upgrade by almost any comparison. I'm trying to think of like another sports example of when you could do that, but like, think of it as playing Brett Hundley for, part of a season and then adding 2019 Aaron Rodgers. So not like MVP level, because Xavier McKinney's not going to be a first team All-Pro most likely, but adding a really it'd be awesome if he was, certainly could be. But yeah, you guys are right. If McKinney is above average and healthy, Mr. Soder, that's a big upgrade because the Packers last year got below replacement value efforts from their safeties. And if nothing else, like McKinney last year against the Raiders had 2 interceptions in that game. That ties for the team lead for the Packers last year. Not safeties in general.
Anybody.
Like, Quay Walker had just as many dropped interceptions as the team leader had interceptions last year. Like, and I'm not bagging on Quay, but the dearth of playmaking in that part of the team. And that's why, like Jason, his question was, who's the guy for Amos? This is where, based on the safety class, I know, thank you, Owen Reese. I know a guy, my buddy from the East-West Shrine Bowl, told me that there's one safety that's regionally close to Wisconsin that they really like, and he's not at liberty to give the name, but he kind of helped you do some of the math. There's one of the guys that they like. But other than that, I don't think the safety class is very good. No. And, if you like Cooper DeJean as a safety, and I certainly do, a scout told Bill Huber that DeJean and McKinney is a perfect pairing. Maybe that's something they do. But I will not be surprised. Like, who was it today? Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think, just signed a 1-year deal. There's another safety. Jordan Poyer just got a 1-year deal. Like, we're past that.
Nuts.
Right. So we're past that wave of free agency where I think Green Bay is going to be able to find a bargain. And even if they do want to draft guys, they need bodies in that room because the only guys under contract currently are Xavier McKinney and Anthony Johnson. And if you want to include Benny Sapp and Zane Anderson, be my guest. But those are guys that were elevations from the practice squad for most of the year. So it is a massive move. It is a kudos to Brian Gutekunst to get Xavier McKinney to come to a place that is not a vacation destination and people are only coming there to play with Aaron Rodgers, who ironically enough, is not in Green Bay anymore, and yet McKinney still chose the Packers. I'm not sure how that worked, but it did. I think this is a move that Gutekunst probably doesn't make if the season doesn't end the way it did last year. But he knows now, like the way the season ended opens some eyes. It is time to win, and it is time to win right now.
And you've made the point. I mean, you've said it on Twitter. You had a whole piece about it over at Packers Central. And I know you've mentioned to, right here on this show during the season, especially as things got better and the team actually got legitimately good going into the playoff run. Like, this was the year for low to no expectations. Now we're back to, don't forget, this is Titletown. This is a team that is expected to win, not division championships, as Brian Gutekunst has told us. You're expected to win world championships, Super Bowl championships. So this is how it should be handled. You should push all your chips in, so to speak. And if you think you've got the quarterback who can lead you there, I do. I believe it. If I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much, that's fine. I think the Packers have the guy. I think the Packers believe they have the guy. I think they have the offense to get them there as well. I think there are a couple of pieces defensively. I still think Ja. I still think Kenny Clark. I still think certainly Rashawn Gary. You've got pieces out there who you look at and you say, they can be key pieces on a championship caliber defense. Then you should be saying, if we've got the space, let's go get guys who are going to help us right now. Or hell, let's go make space to make sure we can get guys who are going to help us right now. That is the spot the Packers should be in. And that's why a move like this is of complete, massive, vital importance. I also want to get to a question here from YouTube asking, is safety relevant in the modern NFL? I say yes. The league seems to say no. It feels to me a little bit, Jacob, sort of like a true inside middle linebacker, where, yeah, it's it's not a highly paid position for the most part at this point. Teams seem to think you can skimp on that. I know our favorite team certainly has believed they can skimp on that position for quite some time now. But then when you really need one, you really need one. Again, look at the Packers defense for recent memory. And again, I think it comes down to, specifically for this Packers team, the defense that they are going to be running for Jeff Hafley going forward. And, we don't know exactly what it is going to look like, full term for a full season until we get a full season under our belts with him calling the plays and organizing and game planning this defense. I understand that, but this is a spot on the defense, and we have known this since the moment Jeff Hafley was hired. You've got to have quality safety play. You specifically need that post safety. You used that buzzword earlier. That is the guy you have to get this defense maximized out. So again, if you've got the ability to do it, and clearly the Packers had and have the ability to do it, go get the best one you can. Go get the best possible opportunity out there. And you're right. There are some other guys out there right now who you could probably go and add for dirt cheap. What did I see for Poyer? It was like $2 million with a max value of 10. It was a lot of incentives or whatever. I don't know if that was the exact number he got. You can get these dudes for probably, not certainly, but probably pretty cheap at this point. You should be doing that. You should be pushing all of your chips in if you feel like you've entered a contending window. So I'm fired up about this. This move, no matter what else happened or was going to happen this week for the Packers, this was a win. And I know you can't say, and I hate everyone, of course, does this, all the big media companies. You can't do winners and losers 12 hours into free agency. You just can't. The contracts aren't even official for most of these guys. Like, unless you're re-signing or you were a cut, none of these are even official until coming up 3 o'clock Lambeau time on Wednesday. So the winners and losers thing over the top, but on paper, in terms of filling needs with experienced, and he's barely even a veteran, only 24, but veteran players who have an NFL body of work to get the best available at that spot, you can't consider that anything but a single individual win for this Packers team. The other move that was an addition, and I know you can't really talk about Josh Jacobs without also talking about the Aaron Jones cut. And we will get to Aaron Jones, I promise. I know a lot of people want to hear about that, want to talk about it. We'll get to Jonesy in a moment. Josh Jacobs, though, coming to Green Bay, he is your new RB1. And at some point, this Packers team is going to have to find RB2 or 3. Depends what you think about Emmanuel Wilson. But he's still around. A.J. Dillon, he's going to walk in free agency. Effectively already has. This is the guy. And if I tend to agree with Ross Uglum because I saw him tweet about this regarding some of Josh Jacobs' production on Monday, shortly after the reported signing, the tampering, if you will, that if you believe that Josh Jacobs is nothing more than the guy he was for a god-awful Raiders offense in 2023, you're talking doomsday stuff. Like, he is a better player than that. I think he's a better player than that, completely honestly. And the Packers have an offensive line that could use some work, but it's still a good group. It's above league average, in my opinion, even with some struggles in the run game. I think he's a shifty back. I think he's a useful player. He's probably not, going to line up as your X receiver in certain situations and run routes for you, but he's a serviceable pass catcher in that regard as well. I mean, this is a good ad for this Green Bay team. And again, I know you kind of can't talk about him without talking about Aaron Jones. And I know that hurts and I know that stings, but you get a little bit younger at the position. Clearly the team likes him if they were willing to go out, give him $12.5 million guaranteed and a multiple year contract, even if you can get out of all of those different years after year one. I mean, I'm excited about this. This is another year we're going in at the very least. Again, we'll get to Jones here in a second, but you go in knowing we have a starting caliber, number one, bona fide, good, high quality running back. Because if you had gone into this year saying, like, okay, we're going to cut Aaron Jones and we're going to bring back AJ Dillon and go from there. I mean, how much worse do we feel about this running game? A lot worse. And that's not even to criticize AJ Dillon. He ain't that guy. He's not in the, Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. I know McCaffrey's above everyone, but he's not in that group of running backs where I think Josh Jacobs, at least on the fringes, could be in that group. And that's exciting. That's encouraging. We had the question earlier, is this a break-even signing? Is this a step down? I love Aaron Jones, man, and I think he's among the very best in the NFL. I don't have any reason to believe why Josh Jacobs should be a noticeable step down from that, though.
No, and Jacobs Jacobs in 2022, when he won the rushing title, was the best back in football. So that's kind of the question, is which one were the Raiders, is their offensive line so terrible in 2023 that he's struggling? And if you look at, like, Andy Herman had a bunch of film clips come out today, and he says he promises he's not cherry picking. I have no reason not to believe Andy when he says something like that, but he says he's not cherry picking. There's a bunch of stuff like that. Joe makes a good point too. 2-year captain for the Raiders. I promise you the Packers loved that. And just like I promise you, McKinney was a captain for the Giants. I promise you the Packers love that too. Like, whenever they're allowed to talk about these guys, they will bring that up, probably unprompted at some point as well. With Jacobs, when they signed him initially, I was like, okay, Jones, Jacobs. The Packers like to use Aaron Jones sparingly anyways, and it makes sense, and you see why, and he's older and he gets injured and just all that kind of stuff. But then you start thinking about, like, Jacobs is a better pass catcher than Aaron Jones is. And I don't mean that to be like, Jones has just always been kind of I've always called him an unnatural pass catcher. It always kind of looks like he's fighting the ball as it gets to his hands instead of just, pulling the ball in kind of thing. So I exactly. There was one pass he literally caught like this during.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought about that, but that's very true.
Yeah. So it's all kind of goofy. Like for example, not to bring up old wounds or whatever, but the 49ers play where he doesn't score, like Rodgers threw that on his back shoulder, because if he threw it over the top of him, I don't know if Jones would have caught it like over his shoulder, which that's a tough catch for almost any running back to make. Mm-hmm. But when you think about it, things that way, I think that what Jacobs gives them is that bigger back that they were talking about wanting, and always wanting somebody that was a bigger back. He's proven to be a little bit more of a workhorse. He has more carries over his career than Aaron Jones does in 2 less seasons, which you can look at that as a positive or a negative. The other reality is this is a 1-year deal with 3 team options. So if he stinks, the Packers can move on. The other thing is, like, now you're in the market, or at least I'm hoping this means they're in the market for some of these slasher type backs in the draft instead of trying to find a bigger guy. Or maybe they do still want to find a bigger guy. I was talking to Owen last night about Braylon Allen, for example. Like, that's somebody who he's interesting if you can get him on day 3. You've got Jonathan Brooks from Texas. I think that's a worthwhile risk for Green Bay to take, and I would take him as early as the 41st pick in the draft. Like, that is when I would take him. Of course, Jalen Wright, that's a popular name. Trey Benson from Florida State, that's a popular name. Blake Corum, like, there's what's the kid's name from Clemson? Will Shipley. Like, there's guys, and there's guys that pair well with Josh Jacobs. And I think that what I feel bad for Jacobs in this case is he has now, and I think this is going to work out better than what the analogy I'm about to give, but he has become the Jimmy Graham to Aaron Jones's Jordy Nelson, where those 2 signings are very clearly connected. And if you say they're not, then like every piece of storyline that has happened since then, like I think it was Domofsky today, His story said that talks with Jones broke down on Friday, and the Packers kind of let him know that they would be looking at a different option, and they didn't want to release him then just in case something fell through, and then they could just revisit conversations, or basically didn't want to get caught with their pants down, essentially.
Sure.
But Jacobs, to me, if you can get 80% of what he was in 2022, again, that was the best back in football.
Yep.
And I do not ascribe to the theory of running backs don't matter. I do not ascribe to the theory of don't ever give a running back money. Like, I'm not saying you got to give a market setting money and, $100 million like you would have once upon a time, but you cannot say running backs don't matter and then piss and moan when Aaron Jones doesn't touch the ball enough. Those are conflicting ideologies. So I think Jacobs gives the Packers again, like you said, they're kind of in the same spot they were in from the standpoint of they still need a second guy, someone that can carry the load. But Jacobs, to me, is somebody that you don't have to actively limit his usage in the way you did Aaron Jones. And the Packers have admitted over the years, whether it was McCarthy or Matt LaFleur, that they've had to do that. And those are things they've had to do over the years because Jones, again, smaller guy, been injured. And that's the part that stinks about this. And I'm sure we'll talk about Aaron Jones and my personal feelings on the situation and how everything went. But I do feel for Jacobs from the standpoint of this was a big time out of nowhere kind of free agent signing that should probably have you excited. And instead it's become a relative footnote because of the popularity of the guy he's going to be replacing.
Right. And I feel for him too, to be honest with you, because it's a hard spot to be in. And the thing is too, and our guy Joe Arrigo is in the YouTube comments here and mentions too, Jacobs is a good fit for the Packers run game, excels at the stretch zone, can be an every down back if they want him to be. And I know, Joe based in Vegas obviously has a keen eye on what's going on with the Raiders as well. And so he knows this, and I know a little bit about it just being, as obsessive about football and college football when Josh Jacobs was at Alabama as I am. Like, this dude's tough as shit. He is a good dude. Two-time team captain for the Raiders, and he's still pretty young. That's obviously significant. He's been through a lot in his life, and he is tough as hell. He's a great story. He's an inspirational story from everything I know, and granted, it's not a ton. I've never covered the guy or had him on my favorite team or anything. Good dude, good teammate, great guy to be around, great guy, an easy guy to root for. So I hope that Packers fans, and not everyone will be, some dipshit was replying to Aaron Nagler on Monday, like, oh, it's getting so hard to be a fan, getting rid of all these fan favorite players. Make new fan favorites, dude. Like that, if it's that easy for you to stop being a fan, I'm not sure. And you didn't want to be a fan however you want, my caveat. But like, were you ever really a fan in the first place, or were you a fan of just Aaron Jones? Like,
so on that point,
yeah, no, take it.
Brett Favre was the Green Bay Packers.
Yes, correct.
Talk to any fan that was a fan in the 70s and the 80s about what it was like when Favre showed up and brought this team from the doldrums. Like, the Packers have been bad for like 2 months total since that happened, right? They were terrible for 2 decades. The Packers moved on from Brett freaking Favre. They can move on from anybody. The New England Patriots told Tom Brady. The Patriots told Tom Brady to piss off. Like, with all due respect to Aaron Jones, it's a business. And, more often than not, if you keep a player too long, what we're doing? We're pissing and moaning about the fact that why is this dude on the team when he sucks?
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And let's just get into it because, the Josh Jacobs things, he's RB1. I think fans are going to love him. I honest to God, really do believe that. And I'm really excited for Josh Jacobs. And again, you're going to get, the whoever's of the world, the PFF guys, oh, it's an overpay. Don't pay running backs. Pay good players. That's what it's going to come down to. Yep. You can't give everybody a market setting deal. Like you said, you want good players on your team. That's the thing that matters the most. Aaron Jones, the emotional side of this. And I think there's a lot of different ways you can view this. And I saw someone even say on Twitter, someone was like, well, take the emotion out of it and see it from the business side. And he said, well, all I care about is the emotion. I'm a fan. I'm not part of the team. I understand that. And if that's the way you feel, that's totally valid and totally fair. I have no problem with that. And again, be a fan however you want. Just don't tell people off for feeling a different way. It, from an truly just purely emotional standpoint, this sucks. Like, you saw Jaden Reed tweet about it. You saw Rasul Douglas talk about it on Twitter. He's not even on the team anymore. Eric Stokes, who we have heard like 4 seconds from in the last 2 years, he was tweeting about it at the same time. Like, this dude, we know how much he meant to the Packers, and we know how much he meant to Packers fans. And everybody who covers the NFL, Matt Schneidman had a story about it. Other people who cover the NFL have had stories about it. He's just a great guy. And as everyone has said, he embodied the good things about being a Green Bay Packer in recent memory more than anyone. And he will be in the Packers Hall of Fame someday. He's 3rd or 4th in pretty much every rushing category ever. Amazing guy, amazing teammate, easy to root for, fun player. He's all of those things. And that sucks. And I don't want to totally remove the emotional part of this, because that whoever saw this on Twitter, I wish I could remember who the account was. I don't. But like, that's true. Like, I didn't get into this and become a fan when I was, 4 years old or whatever it was, because I thought, God, I can't wait to talk about the cap one day. Yeah, let's talk about salary cap. Can't wait. No, you get it because you love watching these guys, because you're a kid and they're superheroes. And then you grow up and you realize what they go through to play, and you go, oh shit, they really are superheroes. Like, this is superhuman stuff that these guys do on a week in, week out basis. And it's fun and it's emotional. You draw, they draw your attention, and you find some sort of attraction or relationship to them. So I want to make sure all of that is understood and valid. And it sucks to see a guy who is so beloved and still good. It's not like he, was completely over the hill. He's still a good player. It sucks to see that guy go. That being said, reacting like I can't even be a fan anymore. What is Brian Gutekunst doing? Essentially being Ryan Horvat, but that's another discussion for another day. Like, this is okay. Like, the sun is going to come up tomorrow. You've still got, I knew you'd like that. There are still good players on this team. Josh Jacobs is a good player. You're going to have a good offense. You've got good coaching. I understand the sadness. I understand the frustration, because I'm sad about it too. I really am. It blows that he's not going to finish his career, at least on the field, as a Green Bay Packer. And we'll get to the Minnesota thing in a minute. That's a totally different thing as well. But like, it's okay. This team is going to be okay. I am certain of it. And if they're not okay, it's probably not just going to be because of Aaron Jones. So be sad about it. That's totally fine and valid. But I do think it is also important as a fan or a media member or whatever else to also understand this team's probably going to be pretty freaking good anyway. Should be anyway.
Yep. Should be, barring, disastrous injury standpoints and everything like that. Should be. With Jones, my first impression of Aaron Jones was on this very platform when he came onto a show with Jamal Williams, and something that always stuck out about him to me was definitely a military kid. Yes, sir. No, sir. Like, and to me, I'm thinking like, dude, I'm a random nobody. And you're Aaron freaking Jones. And also that he referred to Alex Strofe as Harry Potter, which was actively hilarious because that was an inside joke between Jamal and the people that were on that show. So that meant Jamal was talking about us in the locker room, which was cool to think about at that time. Haven't been able to be around the team this year and cover them a little more closely than I have in years past. Easy guy to root for. Like, and when you're trying to cover players on the team, that's almost, you ask for interesting and you ask for, guys that you think are good guys. I don't like having to talk about, Tyreek Hill or somebody with a checkered legal past or something like that. Because how do you navigate that when I do have so many personal feelings about the way Tyreek Hill,
of course,
has had his issue, or Deshaun Watson or Kobe Bryant, or, name your people with checkered legal pasts. Like, it's hard not to insert that emotional feeling into what you're doing. And it's also hard to do that when it's such a good guy, because then you're thinking like, man, selfishly, I wanted Aaron Jones to come back. And the other thing that I realized that's probably hard for the guys that have been there for, Jason Wilde's been in Green Bay for 26 years or something like that, or 28 years. He was there for the Super Bowl 31, however long ago that was. Like, you see these guys in January, February, whenever the season ends, and then you may not see them again. That may be a thing depending on, it's hard to not build a relationship with some of these guys and go through things that way. And, I've got a couple guys that I wouldn't say I'm friendly with anybody or anything like that, but like, I was happy to see Keyshawn Nixon came back today, for example, because I have built some sort of rapport with him to some degree. Mm-hmm. Aaron Jones was a guy who was like that with everybody, and it didn't matter who you were. And, he was the leader of the team in a transition season, which was probably not an easy thing to be. There's always going to be that picture or that video of him lifting up Dontavion Wicks' head after he fumbles in against the Rams. Like, I will say this. I was stunned the Packers cut him because of the comments that Brian Gutekunst made publicly of saying, like, said the words out loud, heartbeat of our football team, and that he, quote, absolutely expected him back. Now, I know it's been pointed out since then that he also used his typical salary cap caveat wordings and stuff like that. But I was floored when I read it because I couldn't believe that it actually happened because of those things. I will also say, however, I'm not overly worried about them losing the locker room or any, because then new guys are just going to have to step up. And I think Jordan Love is in a perfect position to be somebody like that. And the other thing is the head coach, and I've talked about this a lot, but I think Matt LaFleur's crowning achievement for last season was migrating. Again, I've said this before. I promise you guys, not all 53 players on that roster thought the Packers should have moved on from Aaron Rodgers and started Jordan Love. And it wasn't just David Bakhtiari or some other guys, like Aaron's friends, so to speak, whoever you put in that. Like, there were guys on that team that I bet said, man, are you sure we're going to go with a rookie like Aaron? We could win the Super Bowl next year, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. If Matt LaFleur can make it through that and keep the culture positive, I don't have any concerns about that at all. And when you have a quarterback that Matt LaFleur said players are willing to fight for Jordan Love, Jordan's just going to have to take a step in his leadership skills. And I have zero doubt in his ability to do that. But you're right. This sucks because I've said it. I think Aaron Jones was more to this team than just a salary cap number. Mm-hmm. He was more to the team than just an aging running back. But how much money is that worth? And does that make a difference between being able to sign Xavier McKinney versus not? Because if you told me it did, then I would tell you, yeah, they probably did the right thing that way. I don't know if it does or not, but those are difficult things to try and navigate. And that's the hard part when you go through it. And the other thing, when the season was over, and they started talking about, oh, Aaron Jones, they're going to have to redo his contract, ask him to take a pay cut. Well, as soon as I read that, that was the only reason it was still in my brain that it was possible Jones could not be back. Because when you ask a player to take a pay cut and he tells you to GFY in so many words, which is what I think every player who's asked to take a pay cut should do, quite frankly.
Especially a second year in a row.
Correct. And that's the other thing is he took one last year. So when you go through those two things, like if he tells you no, they always say you got to be prepared to cut him. I know the one thing I do know, and I remember reading this once upon a time, is they asked Bulaga to take a pay cut once. Bulaga said no, and they kept him. So I don't know how many other times that's happened. I know Preston Smith has taken a pay cut twice since he's been in Green Bay, actual pay cuts, which he can earn back with incentives, which I'm sure we got reported the Packers offer. And that's the other thing I want to get to with you. So reading Matt Schneidman's tweet about Green Bay's offer, which was a $4 million base and $2 million in incentives. So his base salary this year was set to be $12 million. I don't know what those incentives were, how easy they were to be able to be achieved, but the reporting was that the Packers were asking him to take a 50% pay cut. That is a 66% pay cut because that is a third of his base salary that they were asking. This is why I hold no ill will toward Aaron Jones and like him signing with the Vikings. That stinks, but like, I like my job where I'm at, for example. If they come to me tomorrow and say, we're going to cut your pay in 2/3, I'm going to say, thanks, but no thanks. I'm leaving and I'm going to one of your competitors. Of course I am.
Yeah.
That's why I don't fault Aaron Jones for anything like that. But that to me says they didn't really want him back. I think it was one of those, if you are going to play at our price, which is basically nothing, like it's one of those, it was an offer that was never going to stick, It was never something that, Brendan, if I offer you $25 for your house right now, you're not even considering that as a real offer. That's a very elementary example, but
that's true though.
But this was never something that I think, like Aaron Jones, that was never going to be something he was going to accept.
No, and he shouldn't. Like, to use the same example, I mentioned this, one of my co-hosts in Topeka today, he said, I don't get the Aaron Jones thing, and he's not a Packer fan, so I was going through it, and I said, hey, look, man, if I like my job. I like where I work. I got a promotion within the past few months. Like I really enjoy what I do. If my boss came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to have you do the same thing, but I'm actually only going to pay you half as much," I'd say, "Okay, well, I'm going to make some phone calls and I'm putting in my 2 weeks." Like I'm not sticking around to make that much less for what I've given you, what I still can give you, and what you're expecting out of me. I don't think anyone in their right mind would do that kind of thing. So I don't hold any ill will against Aaron Jones either. I put it on Twitter even on Monday night when the reports first came out from Matt Schneidman and Diana Rossini at The Athletic and said, "Hey, look, Minnesota's interested." And I thought, you know what? Good for him. I hope they pay him a shitload of money. I hope they do reset the market for Aaron Jones, because A, that'd be very funny, and B, I hope he gets paid. I hope all these guys get paid and get rich. And I hold no ill will, and I'm not going to root for him while he's with Minnesota. I wouldn't do that. I don't want the Vikings to find any success, but I hold no ill will against him. Go get paid, man. It is so hard. Honestly, the fact that he's been in the league as long as he has and is still this good is something of a miracle given the modern state of NFL running backs. No ill will. Go get paid, dude. And the other thing too, and I've only seen a couple of people say this, and it's just on Twitter, which we know is a pit anyway, but the whole, "Oh my God, you went to the Vikings, like of all the teams, Aaron, dog, they were going to pay him. Why would he?" Eventually, I assume he will feel, again, some element of loyalty to the Packers. And he's going to come back and he's going to do the summer bus tours, and he's going to get his day at Lambeau Field, and he's going to get his name in the Packers Hall of Fame and all of that. He's going to get all of that someday. Right now, though, why would I feel a ton of loyalty to a company, to a business, to an entity that just asked me to take a 50+% pay cut and then kick my ass to the curb? Like, no, I'd say, you know what? We'll talk again in a year, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it ends up being the rest of his career. I'm going to go get mine while I can. So that's just life, man. And again, we have a comment here. Purple is poison. I agree. Like I hate the Vikings. And it's extremely funny that they are once again picking up Packers leftovers. They cannot help themselves. The Wilf family absolutely cannot help themselves with stuff like this. Doesn't matter who the coach is, the GM is. They are addicted to it. They need to get sloppy seconds. But
it is their version of the bat signal. Like a Packer gets
is.
released, it's like the bat signal goes in the air. So I don't have any ill will against him. I'm not rooting for him. I hope he goes.
I hope they lose. Hope they lose a lot.
And I hope he goes 10 carries for 20 yards when they face him, because that probably means the Vikings are not playing very well either if they go that way. So the other thing about it is we always say, like, it's a business when the Packers cut a player, right? Well, it's a business for the players too. So
of course.
That's the other thing is, like, they ask him to take that big of a pay cut. Rival comes calling. It's probably pretty damn enticing to pay play somebody twice a year and get that chance measured at revenge. I got people saying, like, "Oh, well, Minnesota's going to be terrible." Like, nice job, Aaron Jones. Great decision making there. It's like, well, you only get so long to make millions of dollars, man. And it's so hard for me to just sit back here and say what somebody could do with their life. The exception to that rule for me has always been like Brett Favre, because Favre willingly chose to go to Minnesota and said it was because he wanted. That's a completely different rabbit hole. But, these people that'll be like, "Oh, why wouldn't he just take the pay cut and play with the team that's on a Super Bowl contender or something like that?" It's like, well, because that's not how any walk of life works anywhere. So yeah, man, get your money. And then on the added bonus, yeah, you get a chance to play against a team that just kind of kicked you in the nuts twice a year. Like, I'm taking that chance too. I understand. And the other side of this coin, of course, is that the Packers were right. Aaron Jones's market was around what they were offering. So
no, that's true.
They were right. It's just, you can't. I thought Owen Reese said it well last night. He said, if you were just pitching Aaron Jones as a free agent, forget the sentiment stuff, forget everything like that.
What are you paying him?
What do you pay him? Probably about what he got, maybe less than that. Probably about what Green Bay offered him, to be 100% honest with you. So I get it. Unfortunately, in a perfect world, it's all like Madden, where we keep all the guys on the same team forever and ever. And this guy's my favorite player, so he plays with them forever. And a guy starts his career. Dirk Nowitzki played year 1 and year 20 with the Dallas Mavericks, or 21 with the Dallas Mavericks. And that's incredible because of how rare that is. And there is something cool about that. I understand that. I also understand how rare it is. I just mentioned the Colts cut Peyton Manning. The Patriots told Tom Brady, no, thank you. The Packers have traded Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Like, if your favorite player plays long enough, he's probably not going to finish his career on that same team.
Joe Montana was a Chief. Johnny Unitas was a Charger. Wasn't Joe Namath also a Charger?
Joe Namath was a Charger. Phillip Rivers was a Colt.
Was a Colt. Yeah, Matt Ryan was a Colt. There's tons of different things. Now I'm second guessing myself. It was Johnny Unitas who was a Charger, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. By the way, haircut you could set your watch to. Yeah, it happens. That's the business. And in a few years, we're gonna get his day at Lambeau, and it's gonna be awesome. And I can't wait for it. And I wish him as a person the best because he deserves it. But I'm not gonna root for him. I don't think it's
LA, wrong team, but he was a Rams.
Okay, it was the Rams. All right, thank you.
Uniforms, mostly irrelevant franchise, fan base that doesn't exist. It doesn't care.
Sense. Yeah. Let's get to the other fan favorite who is waived here. We got a couple of different points to get to before we wrap up the show. We can get through these next two probably pretty quickly. It almost feels like really unfair to say we can get through David Bakhtiari being released quickly. I will tell you this because the Packers have had a lot of great offensive linemen in my lifetime. We've been very fortunate that in my lifetime, the Packers have had a lot of really good offensive linemen. If you wanted to tell me David Bakhtiari was the best of the entire group, I would listen to the entire argument, and I don't know that I could dispute it. He spent 5 consecutive years in his prime as either a first or a second team All-Pro. If you're telling me you're one of the 4 best offensive tackles in the NFL 5 years running, yeah, you're pretty goddamn good. And he's again, great personality, leader. I know things have been tough, and people always, and especially in the internet era, people always bring, well, they made millions of dollars. Like, so what? I'm sure they can cry into their millions. You spend your entire life, every minute, every day, trying to get here, trying to get to making your varsity team in high school, to trying to play college football, period, let alone at the Power 5 level, to playing in the NFL, to playing at the highest level, to being, again, twice in his career, the single best player at his position in the entire league, a league that at any given time has nearly 1,700 active players. Like, you were the best multiple times, and 5 times in a row were one of the 4 best of your specific skill set, frankly, in the entire world. I know it's pretty much just the US, but you know what I mean. And people will be like, okay, well, yeah, I don't feel that bad for him. Like, he was injured. He wasn't helping us. He's got millions of dollars anyway. Dude, it sucks to be on the verge of a Super Bowl, the ultimate goal in American sports, especially in football, and probably of your entire life, everything you have ever worked for, and to have that stolen away by a freak knee injury that originally, I'm not blaming the people who originally reported this the day of, but, it was, oh God, torn ACL. As we all know, full well now, that was not a torn ACL. It was a torn ACL and about 400 other things that completely destroyed this gigantic man's knee. Could not be easy to deal with, or to rehab, or to go through surgery over and over and over. Repeat the cycle for 3 whole years. I feel awful for the guy. The reason I say we can probably get through this quickly, though, is I kind of expected it. I mean, he was owed a bunch of money. He's played, 18 games in 3 years or something? I mean, I just feel terrible for him. I really do. I wish it had worked out better. I honestly believe, Jacob, if he was healthy enough that they thought he would play a majority, I'm not even saying all of it, a majority of next season, I think they rework the contract. I think he's a Packer still. I honest to God believe that, because he's still, the one game he played last year, he was really good against Chicago. Granted, you're grading on a curve, but still. Like, I think if he was healthy enough, they would have kept him. I in my heart, in my head, to believe that. But you can't trust it. And I feel bad for him, and he's an all-time Packer great. I hope he and Aaron Jones go into the Packer Hall of Fame on the same freaking weekend. I hope that's the celebration in 5 or 6 years' time.
Man, that would be sick.
Oh, that'd be sick. That'd be awesome. I hope they go in together, and I wish them both nothing but the best and happiness as individuals. It sucks for Bach, but I think we all realistically knew this was probably coming.
Yeah, the only thing that had me in denial was if, and this was a huge if, and I said this, if he was going to play for what they owe him now anyways. So if they owe him 19 to 20 million bucks, if he was willing to play for that, which is essentially cutting his salary from his cap hit for next year in half, that's asking a lot. I understand that. Mm-hmm. If he was willing to do that, I would have kept him, because the upside is all-pro left tackle. The downside is he's injured, and you still plan the offseason as if he's not going to be healthy for the whole season anyways. But I agree with you. If he were healthy, if he had a healthy season this year, because he played 11 games last year, he had a healthy season this year, I think they would have kept him. Or if Rasheed Walker was just absolutely terrible for the entire season, I think they would have probably exhausted more options than what they did. That being said, yeah, man, it sucks. This guy was a surefire Hall of Famer.
Yep.
And the Packers, in my opinion, win one, if not two Super Bowls back to back with, if he's healthy, against Tampa Bay and if he's healthy against San Francisco. But that didn't happen. And great guy. He was honest with the media and everything publicly. And like you said, on the field, they're not a better offensive lineman I've seen play for the Packers in my lifetime. Not one. Mm-hmm. He was a stalwart. And yet, to your point about crying to your millions of dollars, whatever, like as if money is the only thing in the world that can make people happy. So I absolutely hate that ideology and line of thinking, but just making an NFL roster is so freaking hard. And if you look at pictures of Bakhtiari from when he was a freshman in college to like who he is now, he looks like two completely different humans. And to go, like, I mean, I remember I wrote a story on him in August when they were talking about like this new plan and they thought they were finally in a good spot and over the hump with this injury and then able to play. And then he plays that first game and everyone's like, okay, Bakhtiari's good. Like it's good to go. And then all of a sudden he's hurt again and can't play. Like imagine going through all that stuff, devising this plan, talking to all these doctors, spending all this time to get one game out of it. I hope wherever he ends up successful with a couple. Well, I hope he's successful, but I hope the teams are not, with a couple of those exceptions that I'm thinking of in my brain that are all the same ones that you guys probably are as well.
I mean, to be fair, based on the news that came out on Tuesday, the next step for David Bakhtiari might be Secretary of the Treasury.
Oh,
that is very possible.
Yeah, I think next episode of the Pick Six, we should build Aaron Rodgers' cabinet and figure out where Bakhtiari and Randall Cobb and Jordy and all these guys fit in. But yeah, I don't know. I
take it back. Secretary of the Treasury is Alan Lazard after the return on investment for that contract last year.
If anybody knows how to waste money, then there you go. But with Bakhtiari, I think everybody is just assuming he's going to go play with the Jets, and I'm sure that's part of GM Aaron Rodgers' plan. But I mean, we'll see. I don't know. You know, I don't know what he's not retiring. I know, or most likely not retiring, I should say. We've had two separate reports saying he's not retiring right now. So we'll see if that changes. But great player. You know, one of the best, another guy that probably should have retired a Packer, but this is a cruel, cruel business. And, you know, in this case, this was something that the wheels were set in motion December 31st, 2020. And unfortunately, his whole career changed since then.
Yeah, it sucks, but I wish him the best. One of the greatest to ever play during my lifetime. It is sad, and we don't have to dwell on this too much. People always do the wasted Aaron Rodgers' career. I'm not a believer in that. I really don't believe that that's a thing. It's hard to win Super Bowls.
Maybe Aaron should have played better in some of those playoff games.
Well, yeah, exactly. It is, though, kind of tough that fan favorites and some of my personal favorites, like David Bakhtiari, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, Randall Cobb, those guys in particular, they never won a ring. And that sucks. That sticks with you after a while. I mean, you remember the Super Bowl 45 team was talking about win it for Woodson, win it for Driver. Yes.
And then eventually, like several years after, when it was 2014, it was win it for Julius Peppers. And then when we were talking in 2020 and 2021, it was Tay and Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones and the Smith brothers and just these guys that had been around or like in the Smith brothers cases, not for very long, but changed the culture of the team. You know, I do not care about a player's ring count for like legacy purposes. Like I never cared about Aaron Rodgers winning a second ring. I just don't care about stuff like that. But I did care about, Bakhtiari said yesterday, he always dreamed of seeing or being able to hoist a Lombardi on Lombardi Avenue. And that hit me because I was like, man, like he probably should have, because we blew the Seahawks game. Bakhtiari was a starter in that game. Like we got blown out by San Francisco and Atlanta. Should have beaten Tampa Bay, in my opinion, and should have won in 2021 too. And unfortunately, Bakhtiari couldn't play in either one of those games. And if he could have, I think they would have won. But that's the way. That's why we love sports, right? If it were as simple as like what should happen always happens, then we probably wouldn't watch.
No, it's 100% true about that. Real quick, other news that came out a little bit later on Tuesday. One player so we've had two new additions, two outgoing players. Now one player who is re-signing, Keyshawn Nixon, who I know you mentioned earlier you've built a little bit of a rapport with over time covering the Packers this past season. 3 years, $18 million, saw that it could go up to as much as 19.2, I believe it was. We haven't seen the guarantees on this yet. I imagine it's not a whole lot. We've heard that he was a priority for this team this year, that they wanted to bring him back. I've got no problem with this, to be completely honest. And again, I'm assuming this is not 18 million fully guaranteed for Keyshawn Nixon. Is he a great slot corner? No. Is he a serviceable starter if needs be? Yeah, he's fine. If he's like the worst or the 10th starter on your defense, are you probably pretty good? Yeah, you're actually probably really freaking good if that's the case. And he is the best kick returner in the NFL, as determined by the All-Pro team each of the last 2 seasons. So I have no problem with this. A serviceable defender. I still think the Packers can use him a little bit more offensively. I'm not saying convert him to wide receiver or something. I do think there are some gimmicky things you can do with him. He's good on special teams. Dudes love him. He loves being in Green Bay. He's a massive success story for this franchise. I'm all in. I have no problem with this at all. Not one.
Yeah, I remember I talked to him after the Packers beat Kansas City, and Keyshawn is in my opinion, I think he's a culture guy, like a guy who
Agreed.
Is part of that culture in the locker room. And now we just talked about that earlier. Aaron Jones was part of that too, but Nixon's younger and more explosive, blah, blah, blah. Like they're not the same thing, right? In Nixon's case, I think he's better as a cornerback than what Pro Football Focus will tell you that he is. But like you said, is he a great nickel corner? No, but I also don't think that signing him stops them from trying to upgrade in the draft. Whoever it is that, whether that is someone like, Cooper DeJean or Mikey Sainristil or whoever these guys are that, of course.
There we go.
Of course. But, I mean, there are other guys too. Like, I don't need to go through all that stuff. But I don't think he stops you from upgrading that. And with the NFL's competition committee trying to put life back into the kick return game, and that play, Nixon has more value in that way. Because last year it was tough because it's like he's a $5 million player and he never gets to return any kicks because they just boom the ball out of the end zone, and understandably so. Or he has to catch the ball on the end of the end zone and take it out, which probably isn't the smartest of ideas. But when when I talked to him after the Kansas City game, we just made a little small talk. And then afterwards I was like, man, you really fit in well here. Like the guys seem to really take a liking to you. And he's like, yeah, I hope I'm here forever, or something to that effect. And then, the other thing is his quote from the end of the season. So Huber sent me the transcript today for his, after the San Francisco game. And they asked him about oh, season's over. So, now what? What's it mean? You're a free agent. Obviously there's some uncertainty that comes in anytime your contract is expiring. And he said, man, this shit means everything to me. And said some other stuff after that. And then the day I signed my contract to put that G on my helmet, it means everything. Like there's no secret as to where Keyshawn Nixon wanted to play football for the duration of his career. And again, should he be one of the best players on the team? No. Is he going to be a starter? Probably. Should they be looking to, maybe replace him with somebody else or make him a dime back? Yeah, sure. Maybe. But a guy like that, I think you want him in your locker room if you're feasible. And like I said, for $6 million average annual value, it's not that much money. This isn't stopping them again from upgrading at that position if they wanted to. And it isn't stopping them from signing a linebacker, another safety, an offensive lineman, some of the other stuff for needs if they want to do that. So I have no problem with it. Like I said, I think he's better than what the PFF grades and stuff might say that he is. But again, if you could find a guy and somebody fits for the draft, and you're like, hey, this guy could fit really good as our slot corner moving forward. Yeah, I think you do that because you can never, especially this day and age, have enough good cover corners.
No, 100% agree. I'm all in. I'm glad Keyshawn Nixon's a Packer. I am certainly glad about that. Last thing for you, we'll get to this real quick. Already made a bunch of moves. I don't know that the Packers are going to make any other big splashes. Have kind of already hit 2 there, including, again, as we talked about earlier, the best safety available, which is a huge coup for this front office. what is next? What are you hoping is next free agency wise? Even if it's just, veterans on 1-year deals to fill out the roster, what would you want to address, or what sort of players would you be looking at to address those needs?
Yeah, I think you just hit it. This is where in the veteran bargain hunting, the classic Packers free agent type moves, if you will, moving in here. I think that that's cool, Joe. I didn't know that, but this feels like something you probably should have told me before right now. I'm questioning our friendship at the moment. But when you're talking about what to address, to me, offensive linemen, whether that's depth on the interior or somebody to compete with Sean Ryan. Like, I do not think that Sean Ryan should just be handed the starting job at right guard. Mm-hmm. I do not think that Sean Ryan played nearly as well as what some people are assuming that he did last year. And I think that Sean Ryan also was rotating with John Runyon. So, like, I often say, like, underutilized can lead to underexposed. So, like, the example I always use is Kamal Martin. Everybody thought Kamal Martin was awesome during his rookie season in 2020, and he only played 200 snaps. That's like, well, okay, he only played 200 snaps. Or the other example you could use is like Chandon Sullivan, who was like awesome as a dime back in 2019, and then they made him the slot corner in 2020, and everyone hated him by the end of the season because they were like, oh, he's actually not that good. It's like, well, he's making a step up in terms of what it is that he's playing. So I think a veteran offensive lineman could be something, especially on the interior, because right now their top backup on the interior is Royce Newman. And like, I do think that they'll add guys in the draft. Like, if they wanted to go big, like Tyron Smith is still available, that would be sick as a left tackle to make Rasheed Walker a swing tackle. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be interesting. A veteran safety, again, I don't really love the safety class. I don't know what that is or what that means. Justin Simmons is still available. I know that's a popular-ish name. Micah Hyde is available. That's a popular name, and you wouldn't even have to do the jersey swap. I personally probably wouldn't do that, but there are guys out there that are available to do that. And then Joe's got the other guy, linebacker, Jerome Baker from Miami is one. One other name that maybe people aren't thinking about that I would do is Eric Armstead, the defensive lineman from San Francisco. And I mean, for everyone that's like, oh, they already have 5 defensive linemen. It's like, well, they're going to play more defensive linemen, and this is a new coordinator, so maybe they'll keep more than what they've had in recent years. So I think that those are positions that they could upgrade from. And then, you go into the draft with your needs not filled. I wouldn't say that, they obviously are still going to have some stuff that they need when it comes draft time, but you're not boxed into, like, the year they took Nick Perry. I remember they had to take a pass rusher because they didn't add one in free agent. This was like the only way that they were going to add to their team. And again, rest in peace, Ted Thompson, brought the Packers a Super Bowl, all that good stuff. But man, if he was just a little bit more active in free agency, I do wonder what could have been.
Yeah. I mean, there's ways to build through the draft without building your entire roster through the draft, which I think Good has done a mostly good job of being able to navigate the two of them. I'm with you in regard to what positions to go after and the specific names. Have a hard time, not having seen a full year of Jeff Hafley's defense in Green Bay to know who the best fits would be. But I'm in agreement. Linebacker could use help if it's Jerome Baker. If it's someone else, I think that could certainly help. There's plenty of good safeties out there, box safety, free safety, whatever it ends up being, that could help this team. Offensive line depth, sure. Defensive line depth, sure. Eric Armstead's a really good player. Maybe he's not as good as he was at his peak within the last couple of years. I mean, is there anyone on this defensive line outside of Kenny Clark who you would feel like, damn, we can't replace that guy? Like, Dude, I love Carl Brooks. I think Carl Brooks is going to be a stud for this team. By the way, we haven't talked about this. I know I'm interjecting my own thought here. How many times did I tell you this past season my number one meathead take was the Packers need to go back to a 4-3 base? You cannot imagine how pumped I was to hear Jeff Hafley's name and know, oh shit, we're playing 4-down linemen again. That is awesome. I think Carl Brooks is going to be really good. I know Eric Armstead is really good. Like that, those are the kind of players that if you've got the space, and I think the Packers still do, you can make that happen. You should be looking to upgrade. And there are very few spots on this team where I think you can say, nope, there's no way to upgrade this, or it would not make sense to go for the big name upgrade. Like I think receiver, I'm fine keeping the receiver group together, to be completely honest with you. And probably have to add a body to the room, if nothing else, but keep that core together. Your tight ends, keep that core together. That's fine. Quarterback, obviously. You might need a new backup, but you're starting quarterback, obviously. Everywhere else, though, pretty much, you can at least explore. You can go out there and find someone who could at least help. So being intelligently aggressive the rest of the way, as I guess what I would hope for. You have needs you can fill with veterans, with even young veterans. Just make sure you get it done so you're not entirely relying on the NFL draft coming up in just a few weeks from now. We are so happy we got to bring you this special edition of the Pick Six for free agency. No free agency officially begins on Wednesday, 3 o'clock Lambeau time. None of these deals have ink on the paper yet, but we're excited that, and I know I'm speaking for both of us here, Packers have been active. We have been able to put this show together, have something to talk about, and obviously have a lot more hype going into this rest of this offseason. Maybe talk again around draft time. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me. We got plenty, and Packers have one thing about the draft too is, man, it seems like every year they've got extra picks. So I love that 5 picks in the top. I can't imagine what like Browns fans are talking about, or teams or stuff like that. I'm trying to think of teams that have like traded their picks or something like that. But it's a lot of fun to be able to. Oh gosh, what a disaster! What a disaster franchise the Panthers are.
Are you telling me it's bad to give 2 guards $150 million?
It's even worse to trade one. You wouldn't trade Brian Burns a year ago to move up to number 1. Mm-hmm. You've traded more first-round picks than you've acquired in trading Brian Burns and Christian McCaffrey. You pissed off Luke Combs. Do you know how hard it is to make Luke Combs angry?
That tweet is really funny. We will talk again come draft time as we get ready further into the offseason. Certainly going to be a lot of excitement. We appreciate you guys for joining us on this special free agency edition of the Pick Six. For Jacob Westendorf, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. We will talk to you guys down the road.